One. Oh, there might be the front row. Is that what's behind all boxes? Good luck trying to get to it.
Hold on.
Okay, can you put one in the back?
If we're presenting, do we need the Wi-Fi password?
There is a public. They have a public Wi-Fi password, but if you're going to be presenting, we'll get you on their private one so you can stream through AirPlay.
Okay.
But I'll tell you the secret code when you get up here because
So
they don't want me to give it away.
I did, but it's like grabbing a. It's trying to grab my OBS virtual camera instead. I'm gonna see if I can switch cameras. Ah, here we go.
I don't know why I'm moving this over because I'm pretty sure I didn't like this. I forgot to ask. So you now have an armband of emojis.
Hell yeah.
You got this one. Oh wait, no, you got love, peace.
Cross.
Only a little disappointed. I don't see a middle finger in there, but you can fix that. There's space.
Believe me, I thought about getting it.
There are definitely things
where,
where, there are things where you're like, I'm about to put something on my body permanently. Yeah, I'm gonna decide against that one.
Yeah. I mean, that's like a permanent adult sticker that I wasn't quite ready to commit to.
I wish I was smarter like Drew's tattoos where he has like the mouse cursor on his pointer finger.
It's a gnarly golf snowboarding this winter. Landed with my arm up like this and it's flat on the chest. And like months later, now my shoulder is starting to be like. I don't
Yeah, when my body abuse when I was a teenager did my mid-20s, I'm like, oh god, it's totally caught up to me. My knees pop for no reason.
Is that camera working yet?
I'll give you one guess.
Yes?
No.
How about 3 guesses?
This is so frustrating.
This might be a first-person meeting, like back in person, to not have just like every fucking technical issue.
Seriously.
CJ, you might have to fix this too.
Yeah.
Can I offer you a free beer?
So here's the thing.
How
Is that
about
it's trying to grab the camera from OBS instead of just like from just like the webcam.
So did you double check that the stream key here is the same one you have in OBS?
Well, but it shouldn't need. I don't want to use OBS at all. I want to use like the webcam, and I selected that for like the thumbnail, and for some reason it still defaulted back to OBS. And I'm trying to see like how the hell if I go to edit, it's all just description stuff. See, like this thumbnail was taken with the other camera.
So how are you capturing your camera and all that?
This is with YouTube.
copper and wood.
So we could make like a reflective copper stick.
All right,
We're live.
Sure.
I'm sure. Hey guys, we did
Yes. Make it sound like this room is fucking packed.
It's a historic meetup.
It actually, it is. It's a historic meetup.
It's a fucking historic meetup. I wasn't being
Oh my god. I thought I heard Kyle. I was like, there's no fucking way there's Kyle. There's Kyle.
Now it's official.
Now it's official. It's a big
Now it's
deal.
happening.
Welcome to DenverScript. Welcome back to the first in-person 2021 since the motherfucking pandemic.
Woo!
And we still have sponsors somehow. Code. If y'all know what Code is, you're in the building right now. They are sponsoring the venue and the beer. I need to update that so it says beer. So if anyone is looking for a job or needing some talent to fill a job, please talk to them. I currently have my new job. I got laid off second day into the pandemic, or like lockdown, and they found me a job. So they're good people. Please talk to them. Sponsoring all of our kind of like membership fees and all that fun jazz. Quizlet. What the hell is Quizlet do, Mike? Yeah.
Am I in?
Come a little closer. A little more. There you go.
Okay, so Quizlet is an online learning platform. Think of it as like digital flashcards. Easiest way to think of it. We got a ton of different other learning kind of modalities to help you with that. We are hiring here in Denver, so feel free to talk to me or hit me up on Denver Devs. I'm at Frazier, Frazier.
Yeah, that last
Sure, everyone will remember that.
No way.
So we are an open collective. We are a nonprofit, so we do take donations as a nonprofit. All the money going to it goes right back into the meetup. Whether that's getting better food, better beer, maybe streaming equipment someday. We'll see when people actually give us money. But right now, Garrett Dawson, former contributor to this meetup, he's been giving us $5 every month like a good sport. And now Quizlet giving us $250. Really nice people. But we are an open collective. I will go through all these. I kid, I'm not going through all these. But you can go to opencollective.com/DenverScript, or if that is too hard to remember, DenverScript.com, and we have a link to our open collective on there, as well as links to all of our other stuff, our YouTube channel where we upload our videos to, and our Twitter account for people that didn't know we have a Twitter account. And
You have a Twitter account?
we do.
We have
do
500
Twitter.
followers.
We have 502 followers. So.
Nice.
Awesome. So, what's going on in JavaScript land?
All right.
Oh, we didn't want that.
Kill a thumbnail. All right.
Forget how
Hello.
computers work.
What's going on in JavaScript land? All right. So I think most of you, okay, let me start here. How many here are first timers? Oh, sweet. Even
Nice.
after the pandemic, we still get our roughly 50-50. That's fantastic. All right. So for those that are first timers, we do this every month. We talk about what's going on in JavaScript land, and basically it's a broad way of saying we like talking about the things that we're excited about from as high level as things that are evolving and changing in software development in general, or it can be about JavaScript or about frameworks that you like, or it can be even as low level as just something that you're personally excited about that you just started working with. So we'll go over whenever there's a new Chrome DevTools that comes out. We like talking about that because that's what I get really excited about. And then we'll ask you guys what you guys are excited about. So Chrome 92 is out. As always, we'll share the I'm back. We'll share the release notes and also the highlights video for all the stuff we talked about here. But just some of the stuff that I thought was kind of cool. For those of you that have been following us for a while now, coming to the meetups over the past several months, I usually say like the DevTools team seems to kind of get into like a track, and then they like build out like several features along that track. For a while now, they've been building out these really nice like visualizations of different kinds of CSS attributes. They did some work with Grid before, then they did with like Flexbox. So now they're doing some additional work with the CSS Grid editor. So there's two things I want to show you. The first one, and I couldn't do this when we were remote, but you see here, like for this main, you can see here that it is a grid. So you have this little pill that like pops up now and tells you like, oh, this has like grid applied to it. It does the same thing if you have Flexbox or something else. And if you click on that, then this little like table pops up, and you can actually modify them like visually, aside from just like modifying the actual CSS itself. So kind of nice if you like, especially with both Grid and Flexbox, if you're like not super familiar with what does what. So for Grid, they added this editor now that you can use. So that's that. Oh, this is cool. So how many people here have been like messing around with test code in the console, and you do const whatever, and then like you work with it, and you go and do something else, and you come back and you do const whatever, and then it throws an error and says like const whatever's already been declared. Yeah. So they were like, okay, you know what? We don't need to be so strict about that. And so now you can redeclare const with the same variable name, and it'll just let you do that, which is cool. I thought that was great. The next thing is HTML source order. As we were just talking about like Grid and Flexbox and stuff like that, we all know that like the order that the HTML is actually written does not necessarily mean it's the way that it actually appears on the page, right? But for things like screen readers and stuff like that, they do actually go through the semantic way that it's written on the page. So, Matt, just scroll down a little bit. The HTML source order is now inspectable, and it shows up. Here we go. So when you open it up, it'll actually show you what the order of all your things in your HTML is, which is different than the way you're seeing it on the page sometimes. So that's kind of cool to do like an audit to see like how screen readers and stuff like that are going to be going through your page, especially if you think about like, a lot of stuff's going like left to right or like mixed things or whatever. This is the way that both the SEO tools and the screen readers are going to actually go through it. So that's kind of neat. Next. What else? You can now view iframe details, and there's also some enhanced cores debugging. Yeah, and then other than that, there's nothing else that was like terribly exciting. But yeah, so that's Chrome 92. It's what I was excited about. What are you guys excited about this month? And like I said, it could be super high-level software development stuff. It could be JavaScript stuff. It could be a framework that you like, or it doesn't have to be new at all. Like with CVS that they do, like if you haven't seen it, it's new to you, right? With like reruns. So if it's like something that you just discovered, or even if you had like a gnarly bug that you figured out, or like a new framework that is new to you, and you're just excited about it and you want to share it with people, other nerds that might appreciate it, let us know. So what are you guys excited about? Matt? I don't know, you had a look on your face like...
No, I was just looking around the room.
You're just staring at people with really big open eyes. Got it.
I told you, vaccinated, socially awkward.
I think you're doing great, buddy. All right. Come on, guys. Ooh, real rough for day one. Yes, CJ to the rescue. CJ makes everything.
As he's Googling something to be...
Yeah, CJ just Googled, what am I excited about?
So we came out with this thing called Petite View.
Okay.
And the idea is it's basically just like a standalone version of Vue that doesn't include like a template compiler or anything else. So you typically can use it alongside, let's say, like a server-side wizard framework if you want like a little bit of Vue on your pages. So it's pretty cool. If you look up Petite View, it basically has like a subset of Vue features.
Cool. And for those listening, if you can hear, Petite View is a scaled down version of Vue. Cool stuff. Todd, raise your hand.
Yeah. Internet Explorer, the last Internet Explorer is end of life in 4 days.
Last Internet Explorer end of life in 4 days. And for those of you following along at home, if you work for a company that has customers that have said, no, that's okay, we'll keep paying for the extended support of Internet Explorer, I feel bad for you.
As someone who works for a big corporation, Aetna is finally dropping support. August 18th is the last day I have to support.
Nice. Put that in your high five moment.
Oh yeah, no good. Drink heavily that night.
Awesome. Yeah. But there are companies out there that are like, that's okay, we'll pay for the extended support, and then they just keep supporting it, which is super rough. Sure. Well, hold on, let's you go first, and then we'll go back to you.
I found out recently about the numeric separator in JavaScript. So you can use an underscore in numbers. And it's just for readability. Like if you're doing like 100,000, you can separate from commas. You can just put an underscore.
Oh,
and it's still a number.
cool. And it just reads it like as if it was the same as if they weren't there.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
that's
learned
awesome.
that. I learned that like last week too. I was like,
Yeah.
really?
The number of times I'm like, should I split it out to like 5 times 1,000? I was like, oh, just put an underscore. That's
Oh, awesome. Cool.
Hold on, numeric separators.
Yeah, sweet. Numeric separators. Fantastic. Oh, yeah. Okay.
America underscore.
And that's cool. CJ, you got another one.
Sure. You might have mentioned it last time, I don't know. But Dan Abraham leads, of course, just JavaScript. And so it's interesting. The thing that actually excited me was it's highly illustrated by a woman named Maggie Appleton. And so I just discovered her, and if you look at her blog, she has just tons of blog posts all about like illustrating technical concepts. And so I'm kind of excited about the course, but I'm more excited to explore what Maggie Appleton has done with drawing using depicting technical concepts.
What let's help Matt out here. What was
If
it called?
anyone is like, I know what the course is. I have the email from it. But no, like, if anyone sees when I write shit up here, I research everything the next morning and put it like for realsies. This is just enough for me to know what I need to do.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. I forgot that. So yeah, so if anybody, if you're interested in any of this stuff here, don't feel like you have to like write it down. Or sometimes people like taking a screenshot, like pictures of the screen. We'll have one, and that's really good about putting relevant links and stuff. But what was the name of the thing?
Maggie Appleton,
Maggie Appleton, and then what was the name of the course?
just JavaScript.
Just JavaScript. Sweet. And what platform is it on?
It's web. It's an interesting collaboration. So because she did all of the illustrations for it, she's illustrated some courses by other people as well.
Sorry, but like, is it on like Front-End Masters or Udemy, or is it?
It's its own website.
Oh, cool,
Yeah.
awesome. It's free.
We'll let it pass on.
Oh, got it. Okay.
This is not an ad. I'm just excited about it.
Sure. Yeah, right. CJ's gonna send you an affiliate link. Out in there. Yes, Kyle.
Kind of similar. Yehuda Katz is starting a new like JavaScript community for beginners.
Oh, cool.
I think it's like largely a YouTube channel. I'm actually like a little reserved on it because it sounds a lot like, hey, I'm really good at programming. Let me show you how education should be
Right.
done. But
You don't have an opinion on education, do you?
none. But
Trick
like,
question. Kyle's an opinion on everything.
on the other hand, you got some experience on
Right.
and, like super like I think you did great work with Denver beginning on board and stuff. And so you're trying to build a new community on that.
Awesome.
Who's this building new community?
Yehuda Katz.
Yehuda Katz.
Y-E-H-U-D-A. Sorry, what? Y-E-H. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Y-E-H. No, not yeah. Y-E-H-U-D-A. And it's space. And then it's K-A-T-Z.
Correct.
Shit's too hard to spell, man.
That's why I'm spelling it for you.
I know, but you're going too fast.
So he has a new intro course called what?
I'm unclear exactly what the product is. There might not even be one yet.
Okay.
But I think he's starting like YouTube streaming, and like the smell of it is that there will be courses to follow. and
Sweet.
like that.
Nice. Still workshopping it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. We got
What else?
one more. All right, Matt, what are you excited about? I know you already said you're coming to fuck you out. Gotcha. Mike, what are you excited about?
Playing around with Gatsby over the weekend.
How'd that go?
I feel like I can actually make a blog
Nice.
and make a website with it.
Nice. That's server side, right?
Static generated.
Server side, right?
We're not gonna generate. You generate the website. Well, I guess. I don't know how it works now. But
Yeah. It's,
So I think it's the same as like Smith and
Yeah.
all of those.
Winter Smith, Noel Smith. Yeah, it's just like this where it's a static site generated.
yeah, sweet. Awesome. And then when you were starting to mess around with it, was there a particular resource you liked? Are their docs just really good, or did you like learn from
I
someone?
was following something on Egghead, but I think that the actual website probably is pretty fast.
Their docs are
I hit a block, I went there and found the answer that I needed.
Awesome.
DenverScript's website is Gatsby.
Yeah.
I
It's a link farm.
genuinely forgot we had a website. Wow. So
It's the only good photo we have of anyone from it, and that's Gary. He used to be an organizer.
right, but since he's apparently our spokesman, and he's like that $5 recurring monthly that still comes in. He started it like 3 years ago or something.
Yeah. As soon as we started it, yeah.
Yeah, and so he's actually is he still? I think at Meetup he's still one of the co-organizers, right?
I think so. He was supposed to come tonight and texted me like 5 minutes ago. He's like, "Can't make it, bro."
Checks out. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Off to a bumpy start here, our first one in person, but I think we got lots of bullets. I think we did great. So thanks, guys. JavaScript.
Nailed it.
I think we nailed it.
Job announcements. If anyone has a job announcement, please come up and.
Oh, it's actually working.
Yes.
Nice.
Thank you, CJ. Come here. You also be in front of the camera too.
CJ Reynolds, everyone.
So 303 Software, which is where I currently work, is replacing me. So we're looking for a new chief full stack engineer, which is a title that I made up, but basically you're like an architect that still codes. So it's a full-time position. There's a Denver office, which you can be remote. We build custom software for startups and big businesses and a bunch of other things. So talk to me or go to 303software.com.
Nice.
Woo! So does that mean you were promoted?
Well,
You're really selling it, man. Anyone else have a job announcement? So I'm a software engineer manager at Aetna Health Insurance, also owned by CVS. If anyone is interested in working with us, we always have positions open, so please feel free to reach out to me or talk to me after if you're in the market. Last call for job announcements. Why am I still talking into this?
Oh, is this me?
Yeah, or else I'm going to do it for you.
Oh, you want to just do it?
That's all.
Yeah. Be excellent, man. So we have a code of conduct here, and now that we're actually back in person, I think that once this
It
actually matter.
We made this code of conduct like a month before we stopped being in person.
Yeah, you were good. You were good. So be excellent to each other. Just be good people. Be inclusive. Invite other people to chat. You know, we'll get there. And then the last one here, especially now that we're in person, is no statement questions. Our presenters worked really hard on their content, so don't raise your hand and say, well, this is how I would do it, because that's not a question, that's a statement. Don't do that.
It's just a dick move.
Oh, and we do have a website if you go to DenverScript.com. Code of conduct there.
He just added that. There's no way we have a website.
Yes, because in my spare time I code too.
Call for speak.
Call for speakers. Literally, anyone can speak. And you should. So please, reach out to us here on Denver Devs, Twitter, website. Yes, we have a website for years now. There's a link there to fill out the Google form for submitting your talk. Or if you want to chat to one of us beforehand, before submitting it, if you weren't sure if that's what you want to talk about, or you want to you have an idea and you just want to spitball about what you want to present, feel free to reach out to any three of us. Mike Frazier, Guillermo, myself, I'm Matt Webb. I didn't say your last name because Guillermo, you're
Yeah, that's cool.
You're possibly the only one on Denver Devs.
Probably. Well, yeah, I mean, the handle here most so I just took it.
So yes, feel free to reach out to any one of us. So allow me to welcome up. We have our next presentation, or our first presentation. 7 ways to assign the same value to multiple variables in one statement. Dan Cortez.
And now that we're actually in person, we can actually say, while he's getting set up, feel free to get another beer if you would like. There is no pizza left because we didn't get any today, but it'd be a good time to get a refill or something like that if you'd like to.
You don't know some of the Star Wars stuff here.
Oh, nice. Cool. So Yoda, not yoga. Yeah, cool. Should I use the mic or can everybody hear me? Use the mic? I will try. All right, how's this? Awesome. Let me just pull up the presentation. Yeah, no, when you're up here, they talk about the airplane actually work. I know now. Sorry.
still I'm filling for CJ now.
Has nobody ever got this software?
Go to displays.
CJ, what do you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am actively hoping to replace it
Okay.
so that I can train my robots.
I mean, that would have been a pretty baller move. Announce it right now.
On the historic first episode.
Hey, you said it was 7.
I know, right? I lied. I snuck an 8 in there. Surprise, y'all. Yeah, so everybody ready?
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, my talk is 8 ways to assign the same value to multiple variables in one statement, or how to impress your friends with your useless JS knowledge. I think this is a fun talk, but I don't expect you to take any of this stuff away and like implement it in production or anything. So I'm just trying to get maybe some ideas flowing about just JavaScript, the language. And I hope that you enjoy this journey. So like me, I'm a front-end developer at Coinbase. We're hiring, we're remote. I'll post this PDF later. There's a link that's going to take you to a form that'll fast-track your application to the recruiters. So if you're interested, fill that out. I'm a JS evangelist, React is Bay. I'm not good at SQL. And if you want to talk about anything technology, find me on LinkedIn. Always down to chat. Yeah, so why am I up here? Somebody on the Denver Dev Slack said something like, today I learned that you can do something like this. So basically, object destructuring assignment. You can actually destructure the same property on an object and rename it to multiple different variables. Kind of useless. But that means that in this example above, foo and bar would actually be the same value. And that got me thinking, how else can we do this? So the task at hand is in one statement, meaning in one self-contained expression, so like no, not more than one, I guess. How can you assign the same value? We're going to be using this like a symbol, because those are truly unique, to the variables x, y, and z, so that x equals y and y equals z. So if that condition passes, then we know that we kind of did the thing. And I'll start with number 1. And I gave these all names. This one's a legacy minimalist. So you can actually do const x equals y equals z equals whatever the value is. And I don't know if it's even worth going through these, but I have like code pens for all of them, and you can see that actually the condition passes. So x, y, and z in this example are all pointing to the same value. Cool. Some of you might be thinking, that's neat, but that will not work in strict mode. Because in strict mode, what's actually happening here is that we assign the value to C, which is an undeclared variable. So old school JavaScript will create a property on the global object and assign it that value. Do the same for B. Finally, we declare the const A and assign that value. But then strict mode came in and said, if you try to assign a value to an undeclared variable, we're not going to let you because that's probably a bug. So the legacy minimalist is legacy because it does not work in strict mode, meaning it does not work in modules, meaning we can probably not use it in our actual code that we write today. That would be a reference error if you do try to do this in strict mode. Cool. Another way, the object destructuring rename. So the impetus for this talk. So in this case, here I have object destructuring. I create first an object with data property, give it the value that I want to assign, and then I just rename that data property to x, y, and z. And lo and behold, it works. Amazing. But we're saying data all these times, and it's kind of annoying. Can we avoid repeating the data keyword? Yeah, if we write an ify. So still one statement. Now we don't even have to rename the variable. We can just say x, y, and z, and then we just write an ify that returns an object with x, y, and z that have the same value. This is kind of gross, though. This doesn't feel right. None of this feels right, though. Why are we doing this? What am I doing up here? Can we avoid having to match the variable names to the object properties? So, like, we don't want to say, we want to declare the constants x, y, and z, but we don't necessarily want to write them also in the object. Is that possible? It is, with a proxy.
So a proxy lets you take an object and intercept the value that's being retrieved from that object and return whatever you want. So in this case here, we have an object, or rather we have a proxy that's wrapping this object that has data that says symbol yo. And then we have what's called a trap. This would be a get trap. One of the parameters it takes is the target, and that target is that object that says data symbol yo. And it just, regardless of what property you're trying to get out of this proxy object, it's always going to return that data. So now we don't have to do the thing where we, in the right hand of the expression, say x, y, and z. Cool. And that, I missed it. Well, the object is destructuring. If it works, cool. The proxy works, cool. That's pretty neat. Cool. It was useless stuff. What about arrays? So we kind of saw this before. Array destructuring with an iffy. So with array destructuring assignment, if you have an array, you can basically destructure, assign whatever place it is, like whatever index place it is in the array. So we can do a thing where we say array xyz equals an iffy that returns an array with the data in each of those indices. Yeah, feels gross, but it works. But we probably don't want to, we know that it's x, y, and z, that those are 3 values, but what if we wanted to abstract it a little bit and not have to return data in this array 3 times? Yeah, so I hate it, make it better. Well, we can use a generator function. So now this immediately invoked generator function will yield the data as many times as the destructuring assignment needs it. So if, in case you don't know, generator functions implement the iteration protocols so that, and that's the mechanism that makes array destructuring assignment work. So in this case, you can say x, y, z, comma, foo, comma, bar, as many times, and it'll always yield that data that we define in here. Also, cool thing about generator functions, you can do a while true, which normally would lock up your computer, but in generator functions, that is allowed. Dope. That works. Yeah, it's not bad. Let's make it worse. So the generator function, as I mentioned, implements the iteration protocols. You can handwrite those. And there's almost never a need to do this, but so with this hand-rolled iterable, we basically we create an object. In this object, on the right-hand side, we give it a value, the symbol that we want to assign x, y, and z. We give it a symbol.iterator method, which is what kicks off the entire array destructuring assignment thing, let's call it, which returns the object, and then that same object has a next method, which is going to return the next value, which, so next has to return an object which has a done property for whether or not the iteration is done. We need to say false, and then the value. So this .value points to symbol.yo. So this is basically taking what the generator function did, but showing you those dirty internals. And it works. And the last one, which brings this and the proxy together. We can create a proxy object that is acting as a hand-rolled iterator. So in this case, we have the proxy, and it's saying hey, if something is asking me for the symbol.iterator property, return them this function. So that would be the method that we just saw that returns the proxy itself. And then next time, when the thing that's trying to iterate, which again is what does the destructuring assignment, when that thing asks for a next property, return a function which returns an object, which has a done property, and the value. And then the value, because as we saw before, is the target.data, which is what the first argument to the proxy constructor is. And that works as well. Nice. So yeah, that is 8 ways to assign the same value to different variables in one statement. Any questions?
So you said the same value, but in this case it's the symbol is an object, right? So it's kind of like each one of X, Y, and Z is now pointing to the same object. It's not a separate object. Clarify that.
Yeah, so the reason that
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so the question is and let me know if I misinterpreted, but by same value, do we mean like the same reference or a reference to the same object? Yeah, 100%. So in all of these cases, because a symbol is an object and they are fully unique objects, the test condition of x equals y and y equals z is just a way to prove that they are pointing to the exact same object as a reference. So it's not different symbols. And in fact, if you have 2 symbols that look the same, they will not equal themselves. Yeah, symbols are almost like atoms in other languages. They're just these unique things, I guess. Yep.
So you joked about like, oh, this is all really useless, right? But like, but in all seriousness, like going through this exercise, did it help you land on something kind of like productive that you could do with it, or was it kind of just like a fun like academic exercise to like go through and just, hey, let me see how many different ways I can find to do this, or was it like a takeaway that you're like, oh, this is actually something that I can do with this information?
Yeah, so yeah, I guess again the question like is there any practical application for this, or is it just an academic exercise? I can't think of a practical application for this. Also, I would never, if I truly needed to assign the same value to multiple different variables, I probably wouldn't do it in one statement because why? Like we can write different statements, but it is, I think, an interesting exercise because you get to like uncover a lot of different like language constructs and just the idea of like how many different ways can I do this, and like it got, as I went along, it just got like nastier and nastier. Yeah, it's just like, oh yeah, here's a bunch of stuff that JavaScript can do that we don't normally, do on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yep.
So I have maybe another one.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so object destructure and array. So it's basically like your second example, but instead of a data property, so if you pull out, so in this case, if the right-hand side was an array that had the symbol in it, on the left-hand side you could do 0:0:0:0, and that basically destructures the 0th index of the array.
That is very clever. Yeah, nice. 9 ways next time. Cool. Any other questions?
How long did it take you from that post in Slack to like figuring all of them out?
So I've been messing around with like generators and proxies for a minute. I just think they're super interesting and like again, I never get to use them. So like my mind kind of immediately jumped there, but then a lot of the actual like details kind of came like during a drive to Chicago, where just like had a lot of time like think about these things. So yeah, oh hey, like here's another way to do it. But yeah, I'm sure that there are more, but I feel like I immediately like thought of a handful, and now I'm just like, yeah, we got a 9. I almost want to like start like a GitHub gist or something, and just like keep piling them on or something. Yeah. Cool. No questions? Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, while we do intermission changing out speakers, feel free to get another beverage, use the restroom, stretch your legs, lick doorknobs. We can do that now. React in the paradox of choice.
Yes. Hey. Are you on the Skype ranch?
I'm
Really? Sure.
It's all on this one. If you want to plug in a
That's okay. Which one's the?
no, it's over here. It's on
Yeah, great.
It's to the max.
Oh, is it?
I think it's
Is it up to
testing.
That's fine. As long as you're like actually
Yeah, we are 6 years.
Oh.
We're around for 6 years, right? Yeah.
He's getting old. He's serious, guys.
What? You and my significant other. Everyone's just saying I'm losing my hearing.
Because of the power.
What?
Awesome, it looks like everyone's settled. So, I'm going to begin. All right, so welcome to Talk React and the Paradox of Choice. I'm going to be talking about an aspect of front-end development that I feel has influenced some burnout in my life and also developers on my team. This talk isn't meant to be like an end-all be-all statement of fact, and I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I just want you to leave here maybe considering your own developer experience and also consider the developer experience for your teammates as well. I am particularly picking on React today, but please don't take this as a statement of me disliking React. I dislike most frameworks equally. The concepts I'm referencing today kind of apply to almost every framework. Probably not Ember, because it has some strong opinions and you should stick to it. But pretty much every other framework. So before we get too deep into it, a little bit about me. My name is Cassandra. You can call me Cass. I have worked at a consultancy for a few years and in a Greenfields project before that. So I've worked in a lot of different frameworks, professionally React, Vue, Angular 4, all over on the back end. And then I've also dabbled in AngularJS and some other things. So I've had some experience in various frameworks and have been able to form a nice opinion based on those. This idea for a talk kind of came to me when I actually resigned from my last gig due to medical and mental issues caused most likely from burnout in my job. So I've been kind of reflecting over the last few months on what caused that burnout and what can we do to fix that and prevent it from happening to others. And one of the things I realized was that I was making decisions all day long, ranging everywhere from for my team, what the project is, for my clients, and also tons and tons of tiny little, seemingly innocuous decisions in my daily coding life, mainly regarding React. So that's kind of why this talk was born. During my sort of reflection on my prior years, I read a book, and it was called The Paradox of Choice by some dude named Barry Schwartz. And it was a lot of just this guy being angry about too many choices at a supermarket. But there were some kernels of interest in there. And those little points of interest included that the statement that too many choices can negatively impact our well-being. And the author used some studies to illustrate this point. One of them earlier, you saw that I was searching for Jam. I was actually pouring through various studies, trying to find a particular study that I was looking for, and that study is sort of like a social economic study on purchasing jam. And this is the main study that the book kind of is the study is basically you take a sample station like that you would see at Sam's Club, where you go and you try things and you decide if you'd like to purchase that item. They offered 3 options of jam, which is another word, it's kind of like jelly, in case you're like, what the heck is jam? And then in another version of this, they offered 20-something jams for people to try before they purchased. And the findings was that when people are offered fewer choices, they actually purchase more. And they are more satisfied with their purchase. And I thought that was very interesting. After digging into this a bit, there does need to be more research done. Like, there needs to be another study corroborating these findings. So don't take any of this as a statement of fact. Just something to consider. And I have read that they have been doing more studies. So it's still kind of up in the air if choices and our interaction with choices really affects our well-being or not. But something to consider. Another point was that maximizers, which is similar to perfectionists, really struggle when there are lots of choices available, because their goal is to find the best possible option with the best possible outcome. And there really isn't room for error to maximizers. And I shouldn't say like to maximizers, I am a maximizer myself. Yeah, so some topics that are related to this and also included in this book, Paradox of Choice. The main one is overchoice. You might have heard this like on the news or whatever. It's also called choice overload. It is a cognitive impairment in which making a decision becomes overwhelming because a person is so concerned with the outcomes and the risks. Another one that you may or may not have heard of is Tyranny of Small Decisions. This is an essay that kind of talks about how making lots of little decisions seems fine, but when you consider the big picture, they all add up. And that can take a lot of cognitive load, and it can also result in a negative end result instead of positive, even if all your small decisions were positive. You've probably heard the phrase analysis paralysis. It's fun to say. It's just the idea that overanalyzing and overthinking can lead to like being frozen and unable to make a choice. This happens a lot when you're on teams discussing something, trying to decide as a team. And then I also wanted to highlight buyer's remorse. This is kind of a result that can tie into any of the above mentioned concepts. And this is a cognitive dissonance in which a person makes a difficult decision between several similar options, and they regret it. I myself experienced this one a lot. Maybe it's because of imposter syndrome. Maybe it's because I'm a woman in tech and things are a little different sometimes for me. But basically the idea is I regret most of my decisions because I'm worried someone's going to call me out on them and insist their way is better. So if you've ever experienced that, that's a form of buyer's remorse. So these issues can affect a seasoned dev. We already know how to code, right? So we're not really worried about learning much new stuff, a little bit of new stuff here and there, but not a ton. Consider the juniors on your team. Like, they are learning how to be in a company. They're learning how to code daily. They're learning whatever framework you're in, and then they have to make all of these decisions on top of that, and that's a lot for one person to handle. But I do want to say, as a caveat, people do need choice in their lives to be mentally happy and for work to be sustainable, but you need to find a balance. And I would argue that the current front-end technology that we have offers too many choices. And if you're experiencing this, hopefully I can provide you some ways of minimizing these choices or minimizing the daily choices. Maybe you can do them all at once. If this is not affecting you, I am super stoked for you. I am happy for you. But consider the other people on your team and what might help them. This talk wasn't only born from my issues, but also the issues I saw with the juniors on my team. Great. This is a lot of words, and I did that on purpose. I want you to just think about all the decisions you have to make when setting up a project, and also the day-to-day sort of decisions you have to make. So when you're setting up your project, you're probably like, what kind of state management system do I want to use? What kind of bundling do I want to use? What's my tool chain? How are we going to do styles? There's so many options out there. Should we argue about the qualities of Axios versus Fetch? How do I want how do I want to set up my components pattern-wise? Do I want to use smart components, or does it matter? Do I want to have services for some of my methods instead of just having all of my methods in line in my components? What about code layout? Do I care about that? Should we use classes, or should we use functional components? Like, what do we want here? All of this stuff is going on. And then there's lots of daily decisions. If you haven't already decided as a team, your devs might be like, can I make this as a class? Is that cool? They might make it as a class and then be like, oh, no, that's a horrible idea. This looks awful. Then rewrite it with hooks. And then they've wasted all of this time. There's also just all of the regular standard JavaScript stuff that you can decide. Like, should I have an early return? Is that cool? Is that the style that my team likes? Are we cool with destructuring on this team? Do we like ternaries on this team? As someone who's jumped around on multiple teams, I was on maybe 7 projects in 2 years. Knowing what the lead dev wanted was impossible. I couldn't just make guesses all the time. I couldn't be asking them their opinions all the time. So I was trying to make all these decisions on my own, and it was exhausting. So there are some possible solutions that I've identified. One of them comes from a book, probably other sources as well, called The Pragmatic Programmer, and it's the idea that you just need to write good enough software. Like, it is impossible to write perfect software. You just need it to work. It's going to be rewritten in a few years, who cares? So the first possible solution is just to stop trying to maximize everything, convince your team to stop trying to maximize everything, and just go with what isn't good enough. I like this idea, but it still leaves a lot of things open, especially if you're a junior and you don't have any code opinions yet. You can't argue for yourself. You can't defend your decisions. What do you do? As a team, you should discuss your rules and opinions up front. I did not get to do this with the last team that I led because I was dropped in the middle. The team had already existed before I came along, and they already had some expectations. And those expectations were, do whatever you want. So I haven't gotten to try this. And you might be thinking, oh, we do this already. But do you do it enough? Do they know for sure exactly what is expected of them? Because it's not enough to just discuss it, because a human is going to forget. And I know this because I forget all the time. I don't know what you want from me, so it needs to be written down somewhere. And better yet, if you set up a more strict ESLint or prettier, whatever linting system or whatever formatting system you're using, that can help. The idea here isn't that I want to force you to do things. The idea here is that I want to take the cognitive load of making these decisions off of the developer. So when I say set up a detailed ESLint, I don't mean just use the Airbnb config. I say use that and also include some plugins that are more strict and more dramatic than what you're probably used to. For example, if we just finish it, that was it. Oh, nice. Cool. So I'm going to share this just out on the meetup page afterwards. But here are a couple of options that I intend to implement the next time I'm running a team, which is not likely to be soon as I'm not on a dev team anymore. But the idea is I want to be strict in linting so that a developer doesn't even have to think about what they're writing. They write along and the computer remembers the rule and tells them, yes, you can do that, no, you cannot. Some of the things that I think we should start including in that are, if you're wanting to use functional components only, don't even allow a person to start writing a class. I don't think it's fair to the developer to let them write a class and then be like, in code review, oh, by the way, we don't use classes. That's hours and hours of work, right? Another strict one that I'm kind of fascinated with, I haven't gotten to play with it, is the order of methods. And I know that this seems very pedantic, like, I know what order to write my methods in, but maybe your junior doesn't. And the idea is, where are you declaring your static variables? Where are your getters and setters in the order of your component? And this is very minute detail. These are very minute details, but could potentially save somebody 10 minutes of thinking about it. And when you think about saving 10 minutes here and there, that adds up to hours. If you're paying your devs a reasonable price, that's $40 an hour, right? That you just saved. So things to consider. More of them include things like folder names, folder conventions, where you can and cannot put folders. That's not a linking item that I've ever used, but you should try it out if you're interested. I've also never been on a project that had linking in the styles. And that was something that came up a lot in code reviews in my last project. What's the convention of naming? It's pretty easy if you're using BEM or something similar because you can look at the docs. But for a lot of teams, they're not using something strict like BEM, or there are others. And so developers often just figure out ways to make it work, and they don't really make it match necessarily. This is going to force everything to match, CSS-wise, style-wise, which could potentially be helpful. There's a couple of others in there. I like async await, so I would require people to only use async await, and the linter would yell if you're trying to dot then any comments. Personal preference there. Really, my only argument here is try to make things easier for devs to remember, or make it so that they don't have to remember at all. Another option is to use a more opinionated framework. I'm not saying ditch React, because React obviously is a great choice. You want to use the right tool for the job, is all I'm saying. So if you are finding that it's just overwhelming, say you're like me and you had a team of 3 juniors and you, and you had to have an entire app built in a year, maybe Next.js would have been a better option, because there are some conventions that you have, like, they just work. It automatically makes your routes when you're not setting up your router. You're not tinkering with how the router file looks. All of that. It's an option, something to consider. I would also say that if you yourself are struggling with this sort of overabundance of choices and it's dragging you down, focus on some mental health for yourself. But I would also argue pushing mental health options in the workplace would be helpful as well. If you've been to any of my past talks, I pretty much include this in every single talk because it kind of applies to everything. And when I say push for mental health options in the workplace, I mean like bug your CEO or CTO, whoever's handling things, to include counseling in their insurance, or build in time for breaks for your team members, or model good working habits for your team members. Don't be working 12 hours a day. Obviously, if you have to, you have to. Things like that. So, as we come to the end of my little talk, I guess, what I really want you to walk away with is not, oh, this lady wants us to be really strict and we have to have so many rules. You don't have to. I totally get it. We all like the freedoms that we have. I just want you to be considering developer experience. What can we do to make our developers' job easier so that they are less likely to leave, they are less likely to write shitty code, they are less likely to leave the industry entirely. So some points maybe that you caught during the talk are to avoid maximization. Like, we just gotta go for good enough. And we have to tell our team that good enough is okay. That perfection is not achievable or required. We also need to decide on rules and opinions up front and enforce them. It's okay and great to talk about how you want to write your code, but if a developer doesn't remember how you all wanted them to write the code, then it's hard to write the code that way. Yeah, I'll include this markdown file of my slides in the meetup channel. It also will have this gist. If you're interested, it just includes, references to studies that I kind of went through when researching this sort of paradox of choice situation. And it will also include some of the ESLint rules and plugins that I would encourage you trying if you think this is a problem. But yeah, also if you want to yell at me or you have questions, feel free to at me on Denver Devs. I'm just at Cass, nice and easy to remember. Hopefully you're leaving this with some ideas on improving developer experience for your team, yeah, let me know if anything works that you tried. I'd love to hear about it. Questions or concerns? You can ask your concern so that it fits into the comment.
I have a concern. I'm concerned that talk is too good.
See,
In your research, you mentioned more than you maybe mentioned some others, or maybe some good ideas in other related frameworks that maybe React can learn from.
sure. I don't know that necessarily React should learn from them because I feel like the draw of it is that it's so unopinionated. But if you're feeling some pain with React, I have always been a huge Vue fan. Maybe I've lost a little love in the new Vue fleet because it offers so many new options. That might be an option though, because the original, like the Vue 2 docs are still out there and you can still write Vue to that same version, which is more opinionated. I am actually interested in learning more about like Nuxt.js and Next.js because I've worked in React and Vue, and because of the nature of it, there's just more conventions and less just like deciding how things go. I also joked earlier about Ember. I've never written any Ember, but I've heard, that it's really just like you do it this way and that's how it goes. And I think I'd probably jive with that a lot. So if you're interested, research those. I actually don't even know where Angular is anymore, so so you'll have to do that research on your
I
own.
think you're good there. You don't need to.
Is that the ATC?
Yeah. So, yeah, does that answer the question?
So you mentioned meditating, and like I do meditation in the morning before I start working. I have a really hard time working in my day though. Can you talk through like how you handle that? What does the process look like for recognizing that you need to meditate and then like disengaging enough to do it and then getting back in?
Sure. I struggle with this too.
You repeat the question.
Oh, sure. The question is like, how do you build in meditation to your day? Like, it's easy enough to get into a routine with like, oh, I meditate in the morning, I meditate after work to kind of cool off. But like, how do you build it into your day? And I don't have a great answer because I struggle with this a lot. And I also like, if I get emotional, it's hard to even recognize that I'm being emotional. Some things I've tried is I have a big poster on my wall, like right in front of my desk. That's just like a plan of action if you're feeling overwhelmed. And it's just like a step-by-step list of, all right, you need to take some breaths, you need to put on a meditation timer and sit out for a minute. But I would also argue that just like practicing your mindfulness during the morning will hopefully bleed in for the rest of the day. Hopefully. I'm no expert at it. I'm working on it myself.
I think that the timer thing is really helpful. You know time timers? Or like those, they have a big red thing. There's physical things, usually for children, because children can use to like set their own timers. That you can know about time. I think like having a physical timer might be.
It might help with time. Yeah. It's also hard because there's like pressure on you to be working. So like, how can you justify meditating when you're supposed to be writing code? But you're just gonna have to force yourself. I know, like where I currently work at Turn School, and there are a lot of events that are like just on the calendar for everyone. So it might help if you're feeling like you can't get some meditation or cool off time in your day to set like a group sort of time to do it. These times seem to help our community, so I would hope that it would help yours as well. And having other people involved kind of puts pressure on you to actually do the thing. Might be worth trying. Sure.
Yeah, to your point of like, how do I justify taking this time? I'm supposed to be coding, and I dealt with that for a long time too, and then started finding out that if I took that 5-minute breather, 10-minute breather of like doing it, I end up writing more code.
Yes.
And it's like, once I started realizing, I'm like, now you're cool, just chill for just a minute and like take your time, take a breath.
assume that everybody can agree with, but in case not, like taking that time out will make you write better. It's kind of like the same idea of, oh, I have to pull this all-nighter right now or I won't get this done. But then you just write crap code and you like make problems for yourself. Whereas if you just sleep through the night, get a good night's rest, and then write the code the next day, you're actually better off. Love it.
Researching this topic, you find yourself in browsing existential dread?
I always find myself. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, kind of going through all of this and reading other books or on other similar topics or tangentially related topics, you kind of get this feeling like, oh, this is everywhere. Like, how am I going to get away? But I mean, just vacuum and stop thinking about death. Do we have another question?
Well, I have a lot of comments.
Sure.
The Pomodoro method, bike fitting, and some processes.
Yes.
I think the crux of your talk, which is fantastic, like this topic of how does a team write good enough software, is defining what good enough is. There's a lot of parameters like performance, accessibility, and getting those things defining the team what good enough is.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So, kind of like question point is, how do you define good enough? Especially on a team, because every project has different requirements. So, what's good enough? Oh, I think that some of it will tie into like your code rules, but a lot of it is kind of ambiguous. Like, how do I even test how good this performs? So I don't know. I would love to explore that. If anybody has any comments, you should DM me. I think that's fascinating, and I would love to hear more about that. But I don't have an answer. Or you could share it like with everyone too. That's okay.
We could submit a talk
Yes.
about what's good enough.
You're cool.
Do you feel like it's best to like set all of those things up front, or to say, hey, the first wave of this project, we're going to kind of hit it if we figure that out, just make it a priority?
I love the idea of doing it in the first wave, and then you can kind of get some iterations in on it. I think that's great. I think that there just needs to be a time limit. So with my project, because I didn't know what I was doing as a team lead, and two, I was dropped in. It was kind of like we never knew when we were settled. So I think that's great. Yeah, I feel like this first 3 sprints, we're going to be exploring what we like, and then we'll decide. Fantastic.
I'm so curious, as a team lead, have you ever encountered a situation where you have team members that are maybe advocating for opposing choices, and how do you decide, what the recommendation?
Yeah, that's actually something that I kind of want to avoid in the future, and I hope that this will help with. For example, we were strictly building with classes, and one team member was like, we got to be new and hip and use hooks, and that's cool. I love it. I'm really excited that they're using it, but the problem was that we had 2 other junior devs who didn't know how hooks worked, didn't have the time to learn it outside. They either had kids or other things going on. I can't expect them to be using their home time to be learning something new. Honestly, we didn't handle it. I didn't handle it well. The PR that was given had hooks in it, even after we had discussed no hooks. So I didn't want this person to have to rewrite their code. Like 3 days of a feature, and we don't have time. We're locked in on this sprint. We just took it, and then from there out, it was kind of like chaos. Some hooks, some not, and that's cool. Like the project still works. It's fine. It's good enough, really. But it's not the good enough that I wanted. That's kind of back to the point earlier, like what is good enough. So I think if you've got these rules set up, hopefully that'll catch most everything. And then beyond that, I honestly think as a team lead, I would have just had to have been the bad guy. I should have just been the bad guy and said, no, we decided, rewrite it. And I did not. I don't know if that's the right way to go. I don't have a degree in management or anything. I just kind of try to do best by the team. Hopefully that answers the question.
So I have a follow-up, if you don't
Sure.
mind. So when you're working like on a project by yourself and you're facing two different choices, like do you have a process for deciding what the right one could be?
As I mentioned earlier, I'm a maximizer, so I would literally go through every single option and be like, what are the pros and cons of ones? But I also have a cheat, and that cheat is CJ. So my like the way I do it, honestly, is I go through and if I'm like pretty confident, like this is gonna be great, I'll go with it. But usually I'm not, right? Because I'm a maximizer and everything seems like it's gonna be the worst possible option. I vote for it.
Nice guys.
Well, that's the end of it. Feel free to stick around, socialize, drink a little bit. Eventually we will kick you out because I also need to go sit on my couch and space out. But yes, thank you, Dan and Cass. Those were amazing presentations. Those are like my two types of like favorite presentations, where it's like creative coding of like all the weird shit you can do with JavaScript, and then just like the inner workings of like team dynamics and like the humanization of being a coder and like having to like work with others on that. I think those are talks that get overlooked quite frequently, and they're actually my favorite. So definitely feel free to submit talks. Great examples right here. Woo! That's it.